Hi friends! I'm so excited that this is my first video. Today we are doing a recap of Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maehrer. This recap is for anyone who doesn't want to do a reread before the next book comes out, or if you just need a quick refresher before you read the next one. If you're like me, you have the brain of a goldfish and everything just flies out of it as soon as you're done with a book. This is one of my absolute favorite series, hands down, and the author herself, I got the chance to meet her for the launch of Accomplice to the Villain, and she is beyond sweet. She is Eevee Sage personified, but better. Without further ado, let's get into it. We're gonna recap Assistant to the Villain. At the beginning of the book, we meet Eevee Sage, our main character. She's a youngish woman in her mid to late 20s, and we see her at a job fair. She's at this job fair because she's the sole provider for her family, or at least what's left of it. Her mother disappeared, her brother passed away, and she cares for her younger sister Lissa and her father Griffin. Her father Griffin used to be a valiant guard, one of the king's men. After that, he became a butcher, and then he came down with the mystic illness and was no longer able to work. That left Eevee to drop out of school, take care of Lissa and her father, and get a job. We see her trying to get a job because she left her last one. The circumstances are a little bit murky, but we find out more later on in the story. So Eevee finally gets this offer of employment. She's super excited, but then she turns around and she sees this woman with 3 children. This woman has no offer of employment and it looks like she needs help. So Eevee, being the sweet person that she is, decides to give her offer of employment to this woman. So now this leaves Eevee without a job, and she has to go home and finally fess up to her family that she has no more money, she has no job, and they need to figure out what to do next. On her way home, she kind of strays from the path a little bit and heads into Hickory Forest, where the villain is known to lurk. Lo and behold, she encounters him. He's wounded, she helps him, and they escape and run through the forest together. Now the villain, for some reason, whenever Eevee says that she needs a job, decides, hey, I'm gonna offer you one. And Eevee takes it. Even though the villain is the most hated person in all of the land, aka Renadon, Eevee decides that a job is a job. And if someone's kind enough to offer one to her, she's willing to take it, and she's gonna prove that she can do it. We fast forward a little bit and see Eevee in her actual employment. I'd say it's a few to several months later. I believe it's 5 months, but someone correct me if I'm off. Eevee's reminiscing a little bit about all of the things that the villain has done to try and throw her off her game and get her to quit. Like putting a dead body on the desk, getting her to do late night paperwork, having eyeballs roll around on the floor and her squishing them, just gross stuff. But Eevee is determined, and she said, no, I'm 100% going to stick this out. I got this, and she always does it with a cheery disposition. We also meet a couple other characters as well. We meet Becky from HR, who's kind of like the antagonist to Eevee. Becky is very much a rule follower. She is very interested in just business, keeping things in a little box, and just being very prim and proper. So her and Eevee don't get along too much. We learn a little bit more about the villain. He seems to kind of care about Eevee, and he is very personable. He really cares about the people in his office. He makes sure that things are running smoothly. While he does have some quirks like Scatter Day, he does really take care of his office and make sure that everyone's paid on time and has what they need to survive. We also meet Blade, who's the dragon trainer and who's also a little bit flirty. He's very cute, dresses very quirky, and he seems to have a thing for Becky. So after we meet all of these characters, we start to get a little bit more of the plot. The villain has started to trust Eevee enough to where he has brought her into his inner circle and is entrusting her with finding the traitor in the office. Someone has been sabotaging the villain's plans, mostly shipments that he's trying to steal. He tasks Eevee with finding the traitor, trusting her enough to know that it's 100% not her. Eevee starts to investigate and try and find out who it is, and we see her kind of stumble through a couple different things. We also learn a little bit more about her backstory, about how her mom is actually the one who is thought to have killed her brother. Basically, the story is that Nora, Eevee's mom, comes into starlight magic, which is very rare and very powerful. One day she lost control while she was caring for the kids, and Gideon, Eevee's brother, tried to run, and the starlight power actually enveloped him and killed him. After that, Eevee's mom went missing and she hasn't been seen since. Now, back at the office, we see things start to develop, and while the villain is away, we see that there's a bomb planted in his office. Eevee is the one to find it, dispose of it, and when the villain comes back to the office, he essentially saves Eevee from the bomb. This sets everything in motion because now the bomb gives them something to go off of for who the traitor is. The villain, aka Tristan Maehrer, he knows the person who makes bombs like that. He decides to ask Eevee to come with him to a tavern for some off-hours work. Eevee agrees, they go to the local village tavern, and lo and behold, the bomb maker is Malcolm, Tristan, aka the villain's brother. Because he runs the tavern, of course he drinks all of the time, and when he sold the bomb, he never got the name of the person and he couldn't really see them well. The only thing that he can remember is that the person had ink stains all over their hands. Lucky for Tristan, he knows someone who sells magical ink. This sets them off on another search, off to a different part of the forest. This happens to be where his sister, Clarissa, aka Claire, lives. She's the one who sells magical ink. She looks at her ledgers, she sees that one of her regular customers and a Valiant Guard both purchased that color ink the same day, and gives Tristan that information. They're kind of stuck at square one because the Valiant Guard, again, the king's men, are working for King Benedict, who is directly opposing the villain. Tristan and King Benedict have had a feud that has been going on for the past 10 years or so, and so it's only natural that the king would be trying to thwart his plans. It's just intensified in the past several months. They continue on their search, running into a couple of issues. One of them causes Eevee to quit. When Eevee is chatting with Blade, the dragon trainer, he asks her to go retrieve a book from his bedchambers. While she's there, she finds an offer of employment from the king and is completely shocked. Thinks he might be the traitor, freaks out. They have a conversation about it, and that offer of employment was made before Blade had come to work for the villain. Eevee confiscates the letter and says, hey, you gotta tell the villain at some point very soon or else I will. Eevee ends up dropping the note, and Becky, being the antagonist that she is, has to show it to the villain, and the villain ends up freaking out, and Eevee quits on the spot, realizing that he doesn't trust her, and she's hurt. A couple of days pass and she realizes that she really needs the income, she shouldn't have blown up like that, and so she comes and asks for her job back. Meanwhile, Tristan and the entire office was just crumbling without her. Oh, I forgot to mention Kingsley. How rude of me. The villain has a frog named Kingsley who holds up these cute little signs with 1 or 2 words on them. He can understand humans, he can communicate back in some capacity, and Tristan is very fond of him. When Eevee comes back, the dragon starts to develop in his powers. They end up removing the collar to make him more comfortable, and Blade notices something interesting. There's an inscription on the inside of the dragon collar. The villain will fall. Tristan realizes that there's only one person in the area that could make a dragon collar, and it just so happens to be Eevee's former employer, Otto Warson, the blacksmith. Eevee left her job with the blacksmith because when he came on to her, she refused his advances, and when she refused, he got violent. He ended up hurting her, stabbing her with this magical knife, and it ended up leaving her with a scar that continues to hurt to this day. And on top of that, anytime she's near that blade, she's in crippling pain. So they go to the blacksmith. Eevee's uncomfortable the whole time. The villain barely notices because he's too busy looking at all of the marks that Eevee left on that office and just absolutely loving it because of course he has a crush on her, of course he loves her, and he is just absolutely infatuated. They find out that the person who placed the order was a Valiant Guard, and he placed the order for the king. Nothing out of the ordinary, and Eevee decides enough is enough. I'm uncomfortable, let's get out of here. Because Otto thought that the villain was going to purchase from him, he gets irate and attempts to attack them. The villain quickly stops the attack, and he makes sure that Otto Warson is going to leave town and never come back. Eevee will never have to worry about him again. During that time, he decides to take the knife back as well to see if there's anything that could be done about that wound. It turns out that it's what's called a death blow, which means that if someone hits it at just the right angle, it completely kills her. So they head back to the manor. Tristan continues on his villainous path. He decides that if the king is still messing with him, he's going to continue messing with him back. The king already has a female goover. I'm gonna go with Goov. Tristan sets out to capture the male because he knows that once the male is in distress, the female can't do anything to stop her need to get close to her mate. He sets off, captures the male, and locks him in the dungeons. The female, of course, breaks out of the king's captivity, comes to be with her mate, and starts residing at the manor in the dungeon. When everyone finally goes home after both of the Goov are in captivity, Eevee, Becky, and Blade all receive anonymous invitations to a party hosted by the core healer. They all cross paths in the woods before they enter the party, and they decide to go together. Eevee and Becky going under the guise of finding a cure for the mystic illness, and Blade under the guise of just going for a good time. Of course, the villain catches wind of this and realizes that his employees are going to a party hosted by the core healer, his father, and Tristan shows up. Eevee notices, freaks out, thinks he's going to be completely irate, runs away from the party. He and Eevee share a beautiful romantic little dance. They have a great time together, but then all hell breaks loose. Someone set one of the Goov free. It is now wreaking havoc on this party, and the villain heads off to try and capture it with Blade. Becky and Eevee end up joining back up with the core healer, Arthur, again, Tristan's father, and they're all rounded up by Valiant Guard. Blade and Claire capture the Goov, and when Tristan gets knocked out, Eevee thinks, oh my gosh, we're surrounded by Valiant Guard. He cannot wake up to see this because he's just going to go on a murdering spree, and no one knows he's the villain. They just know him as Tristan Maehrer. So Eevee does the only thing that she can think of, which is completely lie to the Valiant Guard and say that she and Tristan are married, that they've been trying to conceive. She just got her menstrual cycle and she's absolutely devastated. She needs her supplies. She doesn't have them with her, and she needs to hightail it out there with her husband. He starts to wake up before they can cart him off, and Eevee just throws herself at her. She starts kissing him, and he loves it. He thinks he's dreaming. He is so happy. He's like, oh my gosh, dream Eevee? Chef's kiss. Like, I love her. How could the real thing even compare? Then he realizes the whole thing is real. Eevee thinks that he heard her talking and scheming, and the villain is like totally embarrassed. So finally the guards let them go, but they kind of ambush Tristan and Eevee when they're on their way to the core healer because they think that the core healer is the villain. Tristan, the real villain, quickly kills the Valiant Guard who are holding them captive and rushes off to try to save his father. They finally make it back to the manor. Everyone is safe except Arthur, Tristan's father, is still missing. He's captured. Everyone starts to decompress from that night. Eevee goes home and she has this realization. Eevee goes home, goes to her father's office, and finds out that he is the one that's been sabotaging the villain, and he's been using Eevee to do so. It turns out that not only had he been sabotaging all of the villain's plans, but he'd been spying on them through Eevee, through a magical ink that copies everything through the ink. Even worse than that, he knew about the bomb, didn't care. On top of all of that, he actually took money from Otto Warson to spend time with Eevee and eventually marry her so that he would have one less daughter to worry about. Then he tried to attack her. Thankfully, Eevee thought a couple steps ahead and ended up drugging him, so he ended up passing out. Around the same time, Claire comes to Tristan and says, oh shit, I know who did it. It's Eevee's dad. Tristan runs off to Eevee's home. He's too late to save Eevee from finding out that her father betrayed her on her own, but he does get there in time to console her. He instructs his people to take Lissa, Eevee's sister, back to the manor, and he spends some time comforting Eevee. Not only do they share a little bit more about their lives, but Tristan also shares about his origin story. Tristan was once the apprentice for the king. Before he came into his magic, it was well known that he would be incredibly powerful. Because of that, the king took special interest in him and invited him to apprentice with him at his summer home. He spent about a month there trying to train with the king, and the king realized, somehow, I don't know, that Tristan was going to be evil, that he was going to be a villain, and he was going to ruin the kingdom and hurt the people that he loved. So the king decides to lock Tristan up in a dark dungeon, and this causes Tristan's powers to manifest, and they end up being shadowy, dark powers, which we all love. But I digress. When Tristan got free, he vowed that if the king thought that he was going to be a villain, that's exactly what he would become. With that newfound bond, Eevee and Tristan return to the manor, Tristan saying that Eevee can live there for the foreseeable future. He doesn't want her to have to live in a place that really scarred her and was really traumatic. Once they get to the manor, she realizes that she left her journal, which is really important to her, and so they start to head back to the manor, but they're interrupted by Valiant Guards and the king. They end up capturing the villain and they take him away to the Gleaming Palace. What's even worse is that Otto Warson is there, and he's been granted the ability to kill Eevee by the king. The king departs with most of his Valiant Guards and just leaves Otto Warson, Eevee, and 2 Valiant Guards to finish up. Eevee ends up stabbing and killing Otto Warson. Yes, Then one of the knights stabs the other knight and runs away. So Eevee's ready to escape. She heads back to the manor, hangs Otto Warson's head in the front hall, and starts to plot how to get the villain back. We end with her asking Becky to kill her. Thankfully, if you're watching this now, the second book already exists, so you can read it immediately. Thanks for listening, and tell me down below. I want to know, what was your favorite part of Assistant to the Villain? Bye.